Yeah, I
So
mean, I would like to focus on the IDP component and, try to get some people interested in that. And if you can highlight any of I talk a lot about VLMs and I don't know, assume that's still a strategy for you, right?
it is at the heart, right?
Yep.
Um,
Kind of,
I
I'd
can't
like
tell
to
you,
talk a lot about that.
yeah, I can't tell you how many conversations I have where everyone is, well, we're going to use an LLM to do data extraction from documents. And they can kind of create a cool demo, and they can do it for a few fields. Actually, I saw one vendor implement, and they did a CMS 1500, and I had them open the curation studio or the design studio, and they had 158 field kind of, I guess you'd call them prompts,
Mhm.
and they had written a prompt for every field they wanted to extract. And
Wow.
it wasn't just a simple one. It was, well, go to the top left, look for this. And I asked the guy, so what? He goes, well, we're using generative AI. I said, dude, you just changed VB script for, another language. How did maybe it got a little bit easier? And I said, how do you deal with hallucinations? How do you deal um, with geometry? How do you deal with confidence levels? Well, and I was just kind of dumbfounded. So, one of the patents we actually applied for, I'm, we're all going to go out and get drunk if we get awarded it. Uh, we applied for it, what, Ellie, 18 months ago?
yeah, it's probably, yeah, something like that. Yes.
At the time, it seemed novel. Now it just seems like duh. The patent was using AI to train AI. So this is our curation studio that allows you to build a VLM. And horribly simple example, right? But it'll make the point. So I'll drop in so when you're and the code name for this product is Nashville. So when you're in Nashville, what your objective is to build a training data set and label it. So you can hit the build VLM button, let it take 10 or 15 minutes, build the VLM, and then come back into Nashville and use the VLM and train it on maybe another 10, 15 samples. You're doing active learning at that point and correcting it, and then rebuild the model again. So this will allow you from beginning to end to create a VLM for any document you want.
Yeah, and so just so you know, we'll be posting this on LinkedIn, so nobody knows what Nashville, Chicago,
Correct.
Orion. So
Yes.
those are your code names for your modules.
Yes, they are. Yes. And we can come up, I can give you some guidance as to how we reflect this. To my partners, they all love and know these products by their code names,
Right, right.
right? Um, so, so back to the patent, right? If your goal is to create a curated data set, which means you're going to generate and lock down a structure, right? That will be the structure this BLM generates. And you're going to do that, you need to create the structure, you need to label n number of samples, you need to build the model, then you need to go test the model and probably fix, some corrections, make some corrections because you didn't give it enough samples, and then rebuild the model. So
Right.
it's kind of a continuous learning thing.
And
Uh,
which is a problem because as you get new documents, feeding them back to the model and rebuilding the model is a problem, right?
it is.
Yeah.
We've kind of solved that, right? What we don't have yet, what we're working on, is a QC portal for this that you wouldn't run at design time. You'd run at runtime. right? And the QC experience for us would not be that dissimilar to the preview experience I have in here right now, which returns confidence levels and all sorts of things. But the cool thing is we really support active learning. So you can take any corrections that you've made, you can assimilate them, you can have the curator look at them, accept them, and with the click of a button, rebuild the model, right? It's funny, I joke that narrative has existed for Kofax since, 2028. We've always told people that when you use the Kofax QC app, the corrections can be, incorporated back into the model. In large part, that was just complete crap because the way KTM works is you're not building models, you're building templates by hand. When you think about it, how on earth could you make a correction in QC and have that impact a hand-built template, right?
Right.
This actually finally supports that narrative. So back to the patent, right? So what my goal right now is I want to create the structure for a W-2. I can do that manually. I can draw, label every label and label every value and create it right. Or if I'm lazy, like I am, I can just come in and rubber band an area.
And so you just rubber band each area and then,
We call them sections. How
okay.
big the section is,
Oh, wow.
logical section. So I can come up here and I can do it for all of these.
And so the VLM is looking at the visual makeup of the document as well. Thick
It,
lines in a certain area,
it's
bolding.
multimodal, right? It's
Yep.
multimodal, so it's using text, layout, context, semantics. That's what makes it so much better at doing this, right? You're not looking at it from just one perspective. Yeah, so I made two sections, right? It figured out the labels, it figured out the values. What happens if I have OMR? I rubber band OMR, and you see the
Yeah.
OMR results, right? What happens if I have a table? There you go, and you get the table.
I
So
love that. I haven't seen anything that does that.
no, and it's in large part because I'm lazy, and I kept asking Ellie, and he made it happen, right? I want to be able to create, and now that I've done this, let's just say I've defined the
Right, everything.
W2, right? I'm going to come in and I'm going to pin the structure. That means I'm going to lock it down, right? I can then drag in three or four more W2s, and I won't need to rubber band anything. I'll just go into the section and I'll hit, and the values will be blank, and I'll just hit refresh,
It'll
and
pull in the other value.
it'll
Yeah.
pull. So I've made the process
So
of
it's zero shot because, well, I guess it's few shot, right? Because you just need a sample and then it kind of will figure it
I,
out.
I need one sample to establish the structure and lock it down. Then, depending on the complexity of the document, I may need 5, 10, 15 samples to go ahead and do additional labeling on. But I'm not rubber banding every zone. I'm just refreshing. We trademarked. We got a bunch of technologies under the hood that allow you to do this auto analysis. We are trademarking it OmniSense. So my goal is to make the labeling experience point and click, maybe take you. I mean, we get thrown to do this. I can probably do this in 20 minutes, right? We did this for a CMS 1500. Here's an example.
Is this all in the same VLM or do you have VLMs per doc type?
I can make we can do it a couple of different ways. What you're seeing right here is I'm using the CMS 1500 VLM.
Right.
We've made kind of brain dead simple. And I could literally come in here and say, build the model for me. And it'll take 10 or 15 minutes and you'll have it, right? And then you can publish the model, transfer it to another system, whatever you want. We went one step further. When I build a model, we realized, well, you've got enough samples. You should be able to train a classifier without even doing it, right? So when you build a model, we have a unified classifier, and you can say, I want to add this model to the classifier. So later on, when you're calling this at runtime, you don't have to specify the document type. If you've added it to the classifier, you just call us. We'll classify it without you knowing, and we'll load the right VLM.
So you don't even need to tell it the type. So it's semantic where you throw anything in, and if that doc type has, I guess, the visual layout, it identifies
It,
that as type A versus type B.
yeah, it's now we come back to the topic of embeddings, right?
Okay.
So whatever the images or PDFs that you brought in to train for extraction, that
Uh-huh.
that data set is now in your knowledge base and essentially can leverage that for classification, is what you're saying,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
exactly. Exactly.
Okay. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. And
Now,
then,
when you're extracting, do you like, and you make a change, you make oh, it's extracting wrong here. Do those, you said it feeds back to the model. Do you have to retrain the model each time?
yeah, but it's easy. It's all
Do you just
about,
hit the button?
yeah, it's press the button. So I don't have to do, so I drop new example. Well, I don't need to do from scratch. I already have a model. Model will discern a lot of value correctly. Remember, only values because structure already there. You don't have to worry about uh, field labels and the structure of the form. It's already fixed. All you need to
Right,
do.
which is a common problem, like in this scenario where you have literally two values in one box, or like the situation like the date fields, right? They're separated and concatenating them together. You do a really good job, even though most LLMs would, these three different data points, you're pulling them together. So like in something like a multi-check box, so you're able to handle multiple values in
Yeah.
like a single label. Yeah, I see that there, right?
And just don't forget the geometry. Nobody will give you geometry off the shelf.
Well,
It's
so
Or
explain that.
confidence levels.
it's a hard work. Geometry in confidence levels, it's a holy grail.
Yeah.
Give me. We spend a lot of cycles on geometry.
So
Wow.
what do you mean? So when you say geometry, that allows you to better understand the context of that
Yeah,
area?
so you need geometry when you select, let's say, and it's shown here, you need to know exact location of the field on the form, either to fix it or correlate between the image and what is extracted from the image. Otherwise, you lost. How do you fix it?
It's an artifact of the way people are used to doing this, right? You always want to see the image on the left. You want to see the values on the right. You want to be able to correlate the two, right? So when I click on a field, you can see the snippet where it came from. You can visually see where it was on the form, right? I think the industry's been indoctrinated to expect that.
Mhm.
I've always wanted to change the paradigm for QC because I thought it was antiquated and based on a process that has become outdated. So when you think of it, see the fields down here, you can tell which ones are low confidence, right? Um, cool apps would allow you to just skip over
Mhm.
high confidence fields and go to low confidence, right? What I've asked Ellie to ponder, I'd like a different experience. You can see this if you want, but I'd like an experience where I create a pop-up. I show you the low confidence fields, both the value and the snippet, and I use OmniSense in QC like I did when I showed you I was building the model. And I'm going to have OmniSense look at the document live in real time and give you a result. And then I'm going to give you radio buttons. Which one is the right one? Despite the low confidence rating, was the VLM correct? Or was OmniSense correct? And by just picking the left or the right option, I can whip through a document probably in about 60 seconds, right? And I
And
can,
you train it better, and then you tell, then you know whether the model needs to be updated, I guess.
yes. And back to your question before, right? We don't want to automatically update the model. We want to assimilate those corrections back in Nashville. And we want a curator to be able to go through and review those corrections and decide, yes, I want to include that in the next model update. No, I don't want to include that. Because if we just started building the model or updating the models in real time, you could suffer from kind of the inmates running the asylum, right? You could overtrain, you could mistrain. So we want some parental oversight. Chicago is separation and classification. Job, there's something for me to QC in the queue. So I'm a QC operator right here, and I come in, and this is what I showed you.
I
So
love that, how you,
yeah,
it's different.
it is, right? And when we thought about it, what's my job? My job is to tell you whether or not this document should be split from that document,
Mhm.
right? So if I just want to create a high performance environment, forget all this crap over here. I'm just going to look right here, right? And if this is saying there should be a split, and I've confirmed in the past that it should be a split, but if I want to remove it, I just hit the space bar and I just removed the split and I combined it with the next document. I thought, if I do want to split it, I just hit the space bar and I split it back. So if I'm just on the left panel, I can just go left to right and just look at page boundaries, right? And it shows me on the right how I'm navigating through the batch. Um, and if I want to change the category, I can come in here. We're adding some keystrokes to make this faster, and I can change the class of that document. But you're seeing here, 90% means I'm 90% certain I should not split the document here. I'm 89% certain I should split the document here. And I'm 99% confident that this is a schedule of supplies. Um, and we track stats, how many changes you made. We time how long it took you to process this.
I love that.
Kind of back to the old, if I'm a high performance correction, I want what we'll add to this is I want to track keystrokes.
Yeah, I
And
guess I wanted to also see that chat AI thing. Is that Orion?
so Ellie mentioned agentic AI, and everyone gets all excited about that. So do I, but there's something I think is much more relevant to the space that we play in that I've wanted to be able to do for years, never being able to. And Ellie and Cheryl were able to achieve what I wanted probably about 2 or 3 months ago, right, Ellie? Orion is our code name for our product that generates insight from content. And there's three versions of it. There's a transactional version, which is the version that you saw, where I can just upload documents related to a transaction. And I'll create a graph, a RAG layer. I got to figure out what to call it. No one's had a good name for it yet. But I create a RAG representation of that transactional content in real time, in memory. And then either programmatically or through the chatbot, you can bang on it and ask questions. And as with RAG, the answers that you get are biased to the documents that you just uploaded, and we can give you citations and kind of all that stuff, right? That's transactional. The next version of Orion that we're working on is enterprise. And in the enterprise version, you would connect us to a repository, Highland, Google Docs, whatever, right? And you can have us crawl the repository and we'll do clustering and we'll build logical clusters based on commonality. And we'll allow you to go into the cluster and refine it and summarize it. We'll let you look for PII information because you may not want to include PII in the RAG vector database, right? But
So essentially what you're doing is you're doing a dataverse, like
yes,
a gigantic queryable database that then you can ask questions and then your agent can basically automatically through a workflow ask those questions, I guess. Is that
yeah, yes. So you could use the transactional version of Orion for just that in inbound transactions. You could use the enterprise version and build a RAG interface for HR, for manufacturing, for legal, right? That you pop under a chatbot. Yes, and the questions that you ask the chatbot would be biased, the answers to what you pointed the RAG at, right? That's the enterprise version. Those are interesting. The one I get the most excited about is what we're calling the professional version of Orion. And at a high level scenario, um, there's there's two sets of content you have. You have what I would call transactional content, and then you have, for lack of a better term, a knowledge base. And you want to ask questions or get recommendations that combine those. So the example that we're playing with right now is preventive healthcare. So I've got a 150-page patient record, right? And I want to go in, forget the knowledge base right now. I want to go in and I just want to learn. Tell me about the patient, right? And this is using graph RAG or what some call knowledge graphs. And this isn't common right now. At least I haven't seen it be common. So the level of insight that it will give you on the patient is astonishing. But then what gets really interesting, you can start asking questions like, well, based on the patient history, what should we be doing? And the knowledge graph created correlation points between your state, your treatment recommendations and the patient's conditions. And it actually comes back and starts creating recommendations. So the reason we called it the professional version, it would be a tool that you would give to a professional, ultimately a professional that was going to make decisions. And we're not positioning this as making the decision for the professional. We're positioning it as it's going to bring all the information together that the professional needs to make the decision, and it will make a recommendation or several recommendations that the professional can then act on. So for me, that's kind of the holy grail, right? Half the time in the IDP world, you're capturing content because somewhere downstream, someone has to make a decision, right? Should I underwrite the loan? Should I pay the invoice? Should I accept the claim? Should I accept the application, right? And a lot of time, those decisions are based on policies and procedures that live within the domain of the organization, in a manual, in something, right? Regulatory compliance, those kind of things.